Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. Today's guest is someone who truly understands what makes a company not just successful, but exceptional. Chris Dyer is recognized as a leadership speaker. He's a best-selling author. He's the author of The Power of Company Culture. And we dive really, really deep into things that you probably haven't really heard people talk about this freely, about how to lead meetings, about how to create a culture where people want to come to work. He can come into your company, he can help take it from where it is to where it ought to be. He can come and speak to your group, but please enjoy this. I know I did. So, Chris, thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you. I've been looking forward to this. You're very accomplished. You've done an awful lot of things, and your book I'm enjoying very much. So I'm just curious, what made you write The Power of Company Culture?
Honestly, the reason that I wrote it is because someone asked me to write it. I am an accidental author. I'm an accidental keynote speaker. In fact, I'm an accidental a lot of things. I'm just in the habit of trying to work really hard, do cool things, with the organizations I have. And if someone comes along and says, "Hey, we want you to do this other thing you've never thought about," I like to try to find a way to say yes. And that has never led me down the wrong path.
That's pretty cool. So I'm sure you've seen the Jim Carrey's Yes Man.
Yes, I
As
absolutely love that movie. I talk about that and improv. There's so many ways we can bring yes in, right? That really help us.
And so many of us are so conditioned to just say no. And so that's a pretty neat way of living your life. So company culture is a huge thread through all of your work that I have studied. So what is your definition of company culture?
Culture is how we get things done. It's the norms, it's the what's accepted. Um, it sometimes the result of culture is how it makes you feel. But if I need to get a project done and my boss says, "Hey, go figure it out," and then I go do it and I come back and bring them that's a culture. And if it's, well, I need to see every single thing you do, need to review every single thing, and I'm probably going to take credit for most of the work that you do as your boss, and like that's another kind of culture. And so it's those norms and it's what's accepted and how do we get things done. Really, culture lives in meetings. So you can just literally pop into a meeting of five people in a company, and I can probably tell you pretty quickly what the culture is like, by sensing that. We've all felt it, right? Like you could be in an elevator and you get out at floor 4 and the people are talking and high-fiving and they're enjoying, and someone over there eating a donut, and then get back on the elevator and go to floor 5, same company, and it's quiet and everyone is secretive and everyone thinks someone's out to get them, and like, right, so we can feel that difference. But again, that's about those norms and what leadership is doing.
It all falls upward. It falls up to who the leader is, and everything rolls down from there. So in your book, you talk about the seven pillars of a great company culture. What can you give us a tip on any of those? Which one do you think is most important?
Well, I will tell you that this is the most common question of like, which one is the most important? I can tell you which one I always start with, but really what's most important is if you look at these seven and you might say, well, we're doing a pretty good job with these three. And these two or three, I don't know, maybe we're okay, but like this one over here, ooh, we're not doing that one. Like that's the most important one. It's whatever is the one that you're, as your company, you look at that and go, that's the problem, or that's an area of weakness for us. That's what you need to go tackle. So many companies, so many leaders make the gigantic mistake of attacking a small problem and putting all of this hoopla and energy and meetings around something that's not that big of a deal, right? Does it like does it really matter what brand of tires are on my car? I mean, I'm not a race car driver. Does it really matter? I mean, I'm in Southern California. I don't even need snow tires. Like I just need 4 tires. And if as long as like, it's some brand that the tire company is selling, I don't care. That's a small issue. But what car I get would be a big deal. That'd be a big decision. It's going to impact my life for the time that I own that car. So the level of decisions are, we have to be really thoughtful and bring people in and ask them to do the work and make these changes around big deals and not waste all of that energy and time and meetings on these little things that really don't matter. Because that's what people really want. They want us to be rigid about the big things, and they want us to be easygoing about the little things. And crappy managers do the opposite. They disappear on the big stuff, and then on the little stuff, they're all over it because they can actually control that. So, to go back to your original question, transparency is where I start. That's usually a place where maybe it could be your weakest, it could be one of your weaker pillars, that companies tend to hoard information, hide information, are just too busy to take the time to explain to people why we do it this way, or is there a legal reason, a compliance reason, is there a safety reason? And people don't know why we do what we do or how we do it, and then they can't bring us great ideas. They can't make decisions on their own because they don't know what you as the leader know. And so if we get in this habit, in this process of sharing and sharing, even though it's tough and like you just don't want to be on another meeting today, but you spend 5 more minutes helping them understand why, you as a leader over time, you basically get a credit down the line back to your time. Your time and energy will be returned to you, and your mental sanity will be returned to you by just spending a little more time upfront being transparent.
I love that. So when you consult with a company and you go in, what percent of the time, and I know you don't have this down to like 27.3, but what percent of the time is it where the manager is majoring in the minors?
Certainly for middle managers, that's like 80%,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Because they can't control anything else. And that's where we have to come in and teach our leaders that it's not about control. It's about them empowering, it's about them helping, it's about them being there to facilitate the goals of the company and keep the guardrails up a little bit, but to really help and empower people. It's not about controlling them. It's not about shoving them into one hallway, right? Or one idea. That's not a middle manager's job. But if we don't teach them that, they have nothing else to do but like act like a parent or act like a referee all day long. If we don't tell them that their job is actually to be, the wizard of innovation over here, to make this team excited, or to make the people happy, or to make them, I don't know, more efficient at what they're doing.
Okay, so let's just, randomly pick a factory. This is a factory and you've got a middle manager, and that middle manager's, if you could walk in and say, this is your job description to the middle manager in a factory, what would be some of the things that you would say to them?
So they may have tasks or things given to them by their boss that they have to take care of. But aside from that, their job should be every single day the culture of that team, the culture of those people that they manage. And their job every day is to get out their virtual machete and clear away the crap for their people. How do they get decisions made that we're waiting on from other departments, other people? How do they facilitate conversations? How do they get them resources? Whatever it is their team needs. Do they need a second monitor? Do they need a decision made? Do they need extra budget to go and do this thing? Like, that's your job, to get your people what they need. And sometimes they need resources. Sometimes they need a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes they need coaching. Sometimes they need a kick in the butt, and that's okay too. But like, what is it that they need? And that's your job. So I talk a lot in my keynotes about this concept of vertical versus horizontal leadership. We tend to think about leadership in the vertical sense, meaning here I am, I'm your boss, and then like I have all these people below me, and then they may have people that they manage as well, and it's vertical, right? I'm up at the top and you're down below, you're somewhere in the middle. It's up and down. And that's normal. And probably your best boss or mentor you ever had was probably a really great boss at being a vertical leader. They're really good at doing all that stuff. But there's also horizontal leadership, meaning how well can you manage the people at your level? If I'm a director, can I manage all the other directors really, really well? Because if I can, I'm going to be a better boss to all of my people because I can get things done. I can move things around. I can get projects going faster. I can get decisions made. I can get things unstuck. Right? I'm good at managing. But a lot of leaders don't ever think about that. They just spend all their time trying to micromanage and control the people that they have. And they show up to meetings and just wait for the other directors to do what they're supposed to do. And they go, well, Sally hasn't made a decision. We guess we have to sit and wait. No, your job is to go and get Sally to get off her butt and make that decision or figure out whatever she needs. Like, so if you think about how you can be a good horizontal leader as well, you're going to get out of that trap of trying to be that control freak person. Instead, you're the I move mountains for you. I clear the path for you. That is my job.
So it sounds like servant leadership is what you promote.
Yeah, I mean that's a version of it, right? I don't know if my term would be servant, but certainly from my studies of servant, that is very parallel, very aligned, absolutely. Um, I would just say that in servant leadership, it's very much about that vertical, and there's not as much horizontal in there. I think you really need to make sure you're thinking about the horizontal, which is also really good for your career, by the way, because if the CEO sees that you can get everybody else at your level to do stuff, that's how you get promoted quicker than being a really good leader to a bunch of people below you.
Got it. Okay. So how about a story? You don't have to tell the name of the company or the person or whoever, but can you share a success story where the culture got changed and wow, here are the results.
Yeah, so I've been really fortunate to work with a lot of different organizations, and I can think of one organization just right when you said that. They were really, really good at process. They had everything documented. I won't even say the name of the program. They had a very specific program in place where they had all these special meetings and terms and things and like, but they didn't actually do anything, right? There was no entrepreneurial spirit. So they had all of the systems and processes in place and the transparency and all that stuff, but they weren't actually measuring like, did we actually do anything? If our sales goal is X, what are we actually doing to get to there? It's great we have all these processes over here and we can, but and so they were ripe for a culture change because we could double their business in a year, which we did, and they could handle it because they had all of the processes and everything in place. They had a good structure, but we had to give them that freedom and release them to go out and try new things and to go into new markets and to think about how to sell differently, to create this particular organization. They needed to be a sales focused organization. They were a process focused organization when I started with them, and maybe at one point that was the need for them. But here they were having these perfect meetings with wonderful binders and great labels with every little thing. And they're dying over here because they're not selling enough. And so we had to change that culture very quickly, that it was more important for us to get the sales in and to run hard. And if we screwed it up a little bit and we didn't always have the perfect meeting, that would be okay. That's okay. The most important thing was, and that's really what the CEO wanted, but kind of the middle managers that kind of taken over and over processed and over, sort of sterilized everything over the years. And we had to just come in and infuse this like, hey, we have this big, huge, audacious goal. Turns out the CEO had never told anybody that the goal was to hit this $20 million mark in their mind. And as soon as everyone knew that, now they could come up with ideas. Now they were thinking big because they knew about the big idea, but that had never been communicated to them. So, there are very specific ways and a very positive way to like, what do we need? And I always say it's one size fits one. It's not like you come in and you do a culture and now you're just like Google or now you're just like General Motors. No, I have my 7 pillars and you figure out how that works for you. How do you interpret that? Again, we go back to the car example. I need a car. I need to get to and from. It needs to be safe and have airbags and heated seats and all of that. But like, does it matter if it's a Ford or a Toyota or a Mercedes? That's a personal choice. And so each organization has to figure out personally how they're going to apply those 7 pillars. But ultimately, what we want is to reach those big goals.
That is mind-boggling to me. And it shouldn't be, But the blindness of the leader in that scenario saying, we have this $20 million goal, but we're not going to tell our people. Like, wow. And it adds credibility to the saying that, you know, a person or a company in this case is inside of a jar and the directions to them is on the outside of the jar and they can't read
Yeah.
them because they're inside the jar. So they need someone from the outside in. So when you walk into a company that is running okay, but they're not getting the results, how quickly are you able to ascertain and go, there's one of the problems, there's one of the problems, there's one, and I'm sure that's instant. How do you get them to buy into it without being offended?
So usually if someone's bringing me in, they've realized that they need a change and maybe they don't know what that change is, or they're interested in what I think the change would be. So there's a crack there in their interest. I'm not just knocking on the door, walking in and saying, boy, this is a crappy place to work. Hi, I'm Chris. Would you like to work with me? Um, but it's my superpower is, and this comes from Gallup Strength Finders, is ideation is my number one strength. So I'm good at seeing 100 different data points and saying, these two or three, these are the most important. We should work on these first. The rest we put away for now. This will have the most impact. I'm good at that. I'm not good at finishing the last 10% of a project. If you leave that to me, it's never going to get finished. Like somebody else who likes to finish things off, that's their superpower. Mine's like getting it started and figuring out what's the right idea. And so in that context, I can come in, listen to people, understand what they're saying, listen to the leaders, listen to the owner, the CEO, what their vision is. And often they've maybe shared with a few people, or maybe they shared that goal a long time ago, but somehow it just got lost on what they were trying to do. And maybe they were setting the sales goal for the year, but nobody knew we were trying. Sales goal this year, let's say, is 8 million, but we had no idea that you're really trying to get to 20. So if we're at 7 right now, your mindset is, well, how do we grow by 1 million this year? That's still hard, but that's a different thought process than, yeah, we want to get to 8 this year, but we're really trying to get to 20. And so how you think about partnering and going after clients and all that stuff is totally different. Totally different. Now, I've worked with other organizations where the problem wasn't the sales team, the problem was customer service. That we weren't dealing with the customers and we had customer attrition and we had turnover and we had all these, and so we had to come in and create a customer service focused organization and really get them to value the client and to listen to them and change their processes or offerings based on what the client's needs were. So again, it's very different client to client. But if you're not reaching your goals, then you need some sort of change. And I love your jar analogy. I'm definitely going to steal that. That's really great. What I always tell people is what you are not changing, you are choosing,
Yes.
right? That's it. And so what's the thing that we need to change in the organization? And I am really fortunate I get to go and play with some companies and help them make that change sometimes.
What a cool opportunity for you and for them. How important is the main leader in the situation, even if they're a little hands off, even if they own 50 companies, but how important is their impact in the culture of their company?
Yeah, the culture is always starts at the top. Now, I guess in the scenario that somebody owns 50 companies, they probably have 50 CEOs. And so they're going to impact it at some level, but the CEO is probably going to drive the culture. I mean, whoever that person is where the buck stops with them for that company, I think they have the most impact on the culture. Culture exists no matter what you do or you don't do. And so you can have a culture that's running without you. That's not a good thing. So it's really let's say the CEO, the owner's job to say, people like us do things like this. This is who we are. This is our why. This is our purpose. This is our mission statement. This is our, whatever. And then be driving that. And I learned this lesson the hard way when I went to go change my culture. I realized like I had to talk about it every day. I had to bring it up in every meeting. I had to bring it up every month in an all staff meeting. I had to bring it up every week in my senior teams meetings. I mean, all the time, reminding them People like, and we came up with a decision. Again, this is our ethos. This is who we are. We're going to make this decision. It's almost like having a religious belief or having a philosophical belief. Like you're not going to jeopardize your values that you've decided you align with in those decisions. And it's the same thing with a culture, like who we are, and we're not going to jeopardize that. How does that show up? I mean, I'll tell you candidly, I fired clients. We had people that were not nice to our customer service team that yelled and screamed and cursed them out if they didn't get their thing in time. And we would nicely tell them that's not acceptable behavior. We won't do that. And they did it again. And then I picked up the phone and said, I'm sorry, we cannot work with you anymore.
Yes.
Right. And even though they were a big client, I mean, I might call them and say, listen, you have two choices. Either we're not going to work with you anymore, or we're not working with Sally anymore. And you decide how you want to handle that. That's your decision. But like, we're not doing this. Like I don't allow people to talk to my people that way. Yeah, even if we were in the wrong, you don't get to talk to us that way, right? So there's that level of respect or whatever. So that those kinds of things, like how those are decisions. And when I come in and I did that for somebody, you better believe that everybody in the company found out about that.
That's right.
And so they know that we're going to take care of them. We know that we value and care for them. And that means a lot more than me showing up on a meeting going, we're all family, everybody. We care about. No, it's what I do that matters. Yeah.
It truly is. The very first company that I sold real estate for, my qualifying broker, I had a client who called to complain about me, which honestly, I know you don't know me, but that's incredibly rare. Um, but it's so rare, in fact, that he brought me into his office and he put them on speakerphone so I could hear everything they were saying. And I
Right.
thought, wow, he's got my back.
Mhm.
I will, go to the mats for him because he's got my back.
Right.
Matters.
Right. And you just said something very important. Like you would go to the end of the world for them, right? You would do those things. And people don't often realize that difference. I won't tell the whole story, but I often tell this little story in my keynotes where, I had like the best boss in the world. She was great. She would literally say, "Can you go figure out how to do a CRP?" And I'd be like, "Sure, boss." And I'd walk out and go, "What the heck is a CRP?" Like, I got no idea. And I would go figure it out, right? And come back. And then she just trusted me to do it. Zero micromanaging. Great boss. And I learned so much by having to like figure things out. I mean, if I went back to her and told her I couldn't figure it out, she'd help me. I mean, she wasn't leaving me out to dry, but like she was great. And then she left, and I got a terrible boss. And suddenly, that 2 hour commute I had each way to work got real long. And suddenly I cared about. I did never even thought about the 2 hour commute. I loved going to work. I loved my boss. I'd drive anywhere to go and work for that person. And here my boss changed. And now I'm like, gotta find a new job. This commute is killing me. Right.
Uh-huh.
And the commute wasn't any different. And my boss was different.
It makes so much difference. So what would you say is one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make? Blanket.
One of the biggest mistakes they make. We have to, especially, this is a very like modern era, I think, adjustments. I'm going to kind of throw out the door the very common things that we might see or things that have been there since leaders were invented, right? Since maybe the industrial age or whatever. Um, we have to get very good at being able to connect and understand where our people are. Now, you might call that emotional intelligence. You might call it, there's lots of different words for it. And so I'd be happy to kind of teach everyone a very quick exercise that you can do because we may all be in the same office. We may be on Zooms or Teams. We may be all the time remote. You may be working with people in different offices and across the country. And it's hard in the modern day to know. I mean, right now I'm sitting here. Are my arms crossed? Are my legs crossed? Can you tell if my body language is open to you or not? Because if we're sitting in a conference room and I'm doing this, I'm not happy to be there and there might be a problem. You can pick up if I'm not making eye contact with you. But on Zoom, I kind of have to make eye contact with you because I got to look up at the screen. I'm probably looking at myself, not you. And so you think I'm looking at you and I'm making good eye contact. So, anyways, like we don't really know how people are and how they really are feeling. So I love this exercise called bonding. And what we did with my teams and I teach this to my clients is no more than once a day. And you would only do this with your team, the people you work with all the time. You wouldn't do this with Bob in accounting who you only see at the holiday party, right? These are people you have some psychological trust with. And you show up, and at the beginning of the meeting, everyone goes around the room and you say, how are you showing up? The words are very specific. Do not change them. How are you showing up? Go around the room. Okay. Now, if everyone says they're doing pretty good, everything's cool, now you, as the leader, get to go. You do not get to go first. You do not get to say, listen, let's listen to Karen and Chris on this podcast, and I heard this cool thing. We're gonna do bonding. I'll go first. No, don't do that. If you're going around the room and someone says, I just found out that my grandmother has been diagnosed with cancer. I just found out that my spouse is cheating on me. Like you get some drop, like there's a big thing. Meeting is done or meeting is paused because you need to help deal with that person. Now, is it appropriate for the team to deal with them? Is it appropriate to cancel the meeting and then go meet with that person one-on-one? Like if something's going on in their life, that's your moment to step up and help. I had someone say, I just found out, my mom passed away. And I'm like, what the F are you doing on this call? Like, I'm like, are you? And she said, I just didn't know what to do. And I felt like work, I'm like, no, 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 no. You're off for the rest of the week. Go be with your family. This will not count against your PTO. Like, just go. And you get your head on, and then we'll talk on Monday and figure out what you need. And again, people remember those moments and they remember what you did, and that gets around the office. Now, it could just be, well, I got a new puppy and I haven't slept in 3 days because we're crate training. Not a giant deal, but now everyone on the team knows why you're being so grumpy because you haven't slept in 3 days because the puppy's been, barking and all that stuff. Awesome. Now I know that you don't hate me and you're not mad at me. I didn't do anything wrong. It's just that you're a grumpy person because you haven't slept. That's really important information for a team to operate correctly. And if your team is struggling, I'm exhausted, I've got 19 reports to do, all these things are terrible in my life, and then it gets to you as the leader, you don't get to say anything. You only get to share if they're all doing well. Then that's a great time to be vulnerable. Then that's a good time to say what maybe you're struggling with, and they have some sense of what's going on in your life. But they do not have the capacity to handle your crap on top of their crap at that moment. And I think this is a very long way of me telling you that's the mistake that leaders make. They get told to be vulnerable and they get told to do all these things, and their team is struggling and underwater, and they show up and they start telling them all about their problems, and the team is like, I, I can't handle it. Or boo-hoo, boss, you make twice as much as me. You get way more vacation than me. You're in the real decisions and you're complaining about this. Like, I don't care. Like, I got no time for this. And you're creating a barrier between you and your team that doesn't need to be there. So if you want to cry uphill, go to your boss and cry about your problems. Um, there's sometimes your team is okay and they will want to listen. Now, that's the first thing you do. Then you have your meeting, and then you leave 5 minutes at the end and you go around the room and you say, again, words are important. How are you leaving? So the first question is like them as the human being their whole life. But how are you leaving tends to be the employee answer, which is like, how am I leaving this very specific meeting right now? And you might hear, oh, I feel great. I feel like finally have a solution. I'm happy I can go talk to the client now. Or you might hear, I'm not sure about this. Because I can't tell you how many times it's happened to me. I'm like, we had the best meeting in the world, team. We did it. Problem solved. I'm your kick butt CEO. I did it. And then I go, how are you all leaving? And they're like, I don't think the client's going to go for this. And I'm like, were we not in the same meeting? Okay. I guess we need, and what would have happened is we would have left and they would have not done what I told them to do. And then I would have been mad they were being passive aggressive. And it would have been this weird, like, fight, push and pull. We all know that tension, right? They don't really want to do it, and I want them to do it, but I'm their boss. And so instead it's, oh, let's have another meeting. If you're not sure, if I'm hearing from the team that we're not where I think I am, let's keep talking about it. Right. And that's going to get us to that next level. So, and again, how they're leaving is important. It doesn't really matter how you're leaving as the leader. No one cares. You're asking them to tell you. Now, hopefully they tell you I'm amazing, this is great, and okay, cool. But you will get the occasional curveball of like, IT's never going to approve this, guys. I know you think this is going to be a great idea, but there's no way IT is going to do this. I'm like, okay. Let's the problem needs to continue to be worked on here. So that's the thing leaders can do, and that's the mistake that they're making, is not dealing with all of the emotional stuff and bandwidth that's happening, especially because in so many of our interactions, we can't actually see their bodies and we can't actually judge how they're feeling. You and I are in a boardroom together, and I could probably pick up, even though you're not saying it, I'm pretty good at reading body language, whether or not you're happy or not happy or excited or think that person who's talking is an idiot because you've turned your body and you've started writing something down. Like, I can pick up on things that I can't pick up on a Zoom. And so we need new tools to be able to pull that information out from our people in order to be effective. And I apologize for talking for 59 minutes straight, but that's the exercise. Hopefully that'll help.
I love it. I love it. And you're doing great. So I recently had someone on the podcast who is a C-suite person, and he's also an introvert. And it was very interesting for him to explain that when he has meetings and he has what you call masterminds, he says 50% of your people are not being heard from at all. And so and they're the ones who really do have the ideas. And so what he's done to combat that is to have everyone answer a question before you ever get in there. You have it written down, and then we're all going to talk about that. How do you pull out your introverts and get all the information you need from them?
So what he's identified there is a really important concept that I want to make sure people understand. We want people to come to their own conclusions first. This is how we make sure we hear people. This is how we combat group thought. And what we're told by society is you're supposed to be listening to everyone's ideas and you're supposed to be open-minded. Yes, but first you need to take a look at the thing and decide what you would do and how you would solve that problem. Come to your own conclusion first. Then you can show up to the meeting and be open-minded to other ways of doing it. But if you just show up and you haven't thought through it, and now you're just being open-minded, you end up going with the loudest person or the most senior person and not coming up with the best idea. So it's really important that you are thinking through these things and coming up with solutions there. Now, what I do with introverted people who are struggling in this way is sort of two parts. So we do these funny meetings I invented. One of them is called a tsunami planning meeting. And a tsunami planning meeting happens once a month for 30 minutes with a team, and it is a fake meeting. Now, why in the world would I have a fake meeting when we have so many meetings during the month anyways? Well, I give them a topic, and it's a fake topic, like what happens if I got hit by a bus and I'm in a coma for 6 months? Or what happens if our business doubles? Or what happens if we lost our number one client? Like, giving them these prompts, and then they discuss it. The leader shuts up, they discuss it. And what we notice is that people come out of their shell and they're more likely to practice sharing their thoughts, disagreeing with people, because it's safe, because it's an imaginary thing. It's not a real thing that someone's going to say, that's a stupid idea. It's not a thing where someone's going to say, that's a great idea. You're in charge now and you have to go do it. It's just an exercise. So we're giving them practice, because I think it's crazy that we literally expect everybody to perform all day long. If you think about sports, they practice 99% of the time. They only perform 1% of the time. And yet in business, all we do is perform and we never actually practice the skills that we need. So this is an opportunity for teams to practice having a good meeting, practice bringing up their ideas, practice disagreeing with each other, practice listening. And if we notice as the leader that there are people struggling, that's where we identify this. And then offline, we pull that person in and say, hey, in the next meeting, or maybe for the rest of the month, can you really work on allowing everybody else time to talk? Can you make sure that everyone has been heard before you bring up your second and third and fourth and fifth idea to this thing? Like I need you to really help me make everyone feel heard. That's bringing the extroverts down, right? But also maybe the introvert, it's, hey, I really need you in this month to think about how you can be heard, how you can get your idea brought up, how you can, and then giving them strategies, giving them ideas, giving them thoughts on how they can do that. My favorite one is to give them this power, this question of, hey, everyone, these are all great ideas, but what if we did something different? What else could we do? That's a really safe way for someone who doesn't feel comfortable disagreeing. Because an extrovert will just say, this is a stupid idea. There's no way Tom's ever going to agree to this. We need to come up with something else. But an introvert might be like, well, what else would we do? In my book, I give the silly example of like, well, what does everyone want for lunch? I want pizza. I want pizza. I want tacos. And you're like, I want Indian food. And everyone's just saying pizza and tacos, like they say every single time. And if I'm too afraid and too shy to say I want Indian food, I would say, well, what if we didn't get pizza this time? What else would we get? And what you'll notice is people start saying, well, we could get Chinese food and we could get Indian food. Oh, Indian food. I've been really craving Indian. I go, oh, Indian food, that'd be good. And then suddenly the group's on to Indian food. You never even told them, I'm sick and tired of pizza and I'm sick and tired of tacos. But it's a way to help that conversation. We can give them those tools. So there are great ways, but it's up to the leader to really coach both ends of that. Help the extroverts create space, help the introverts fill in that space in those meetings.
One of the things that you said earlier that I'd like to go a little deeper into that I think is a huge mistake of leaders is that they do talk first. And if I walk in and I own the company and I say, I think we should do this, what do you think? What happens?
I was going to agree with you, right? I mean, you're the boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So please, leaders, please don't think that you really have it all figured out. The person at the lowest paid person in your company probably has ideas that could make you a fortune if you'll listen.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is, if someone is listening and they're thinking, gosh, man, this guy Chris might really be able to come in and make a powerful difference to us, but they're scared. They're scared. Like, what if he comes in and he fires everybody? Or what if he, what are some of what are people's biggest fears on hiring a consultant and opening up their world to you?
Yeah, usually it's some fear about the change or about the, how are we going to how are we going to get people to do this stuff? So the good news is I've never gone into any company and said we should start firing a bunch of people. It's usually quite the opposite. I'm often brought in and they say, well, I have all these problem employees. We've got to fix them and do it. And it's never the employees. It's always the culture. And when we fix the culture, most of the time people change their behaviors because now they know what the roadmap is and they know what's expected of them and they know what people like us do things like this. And occasionally, people who don't want to change, who are toxic and have just been surviving by being that toxic person, they leave pretty quickly. They realize that now everyone is rowing the boat the same way and it's not fun to be the only person who's not. And if they don't want to change their behaviors, they'll go find another job somewhere else. So it's never my job to come in and say fire through 1/4 of the team, or that's not the kind of business I'm in. How do we create these environments so that we can honestly make work not suck? Like, we spend so much time at work. Why do you want it to suck? Like, most people tell me their work sucks, their job sucks, their team sucks, their leader sucks. Like, oh, they just don't enjoy it. It's a job. But there is like a quarter of people who say they love work, they love what they do, and they get great joy and passion out of going and making a difference in the world. And we all can have that. You just got to figure out how. And I love being able to come in and help companies do that.
It's beautiful. So what are some of the hidden costs of having a toxic culture?
Oh, I mean, your best people leave, number one. It's really hard to hire good people because everyone knows, they can figure that out. Especially the top performers can sniff out pretty quickly in an interview process and all that, whether or not this is going to be a toxic place to work. We certainly lose money. So we lose profits. If people don't care about how much things cost, how much money we spend, if it's toxic, they don't care, right? Oh, am I supposed to buy? I mean, it's a silly thing, but like I had the choice between two different kinds of pens that are generally the same pen, but one is more expensive and one not. They don't care. This is a toxic place. I'm gonna buy the most expensive pen. Like when we worked on our culture, it was amazing how expenses went down and people started caring about the company because we showed them we cared about them. They started finding better ways to save money. So profits go up. When we fix our culture, right, it's performance is impacted. So if people feel like they're just going to come and give the minimum, they're just going to work for a paycheck, and that's it. And I certainly had people that worked for me that said, "Hey, I'm just here for the paycheck. I don't." They did a good job. They had no desire to be promoted. They had no desire to do anything else. That's okay. You can be that person. They were open and honest about it. We had honest conversations with them. They're like, "Listen, I'm happy doing this job. I could do this job for the next 20 years. And like, I don't want to be the leader." So get that out of your head that everyone has to be on this career trajectory to try to be a CEO because they don't. But, performance will get better. They can do a better job. And then productivity will increase. So toxic cultures lower productivity, lower performance, lower profits. And as a senior leader, a CEO, as an owner, those are the three things you're worried about all day long. That's what keeps you up at night. So why wouldn't you want to create a better culture for your people? And it doesn't have creating a great culture doesn't mean that you're handing out lollipops and Starbucks cards to people. It's not like I'm not talking about like this toxic, I don't know, positivity thing of like, people that's like misnomer of what we're talking about. We're talking about creating really intentional ways to work and really helping people have an understanding about how to do their job in the best way possible and removing all of the unnecessary obstacles and frictions and mud that gets in their way, right?
So you've talked an awful lot about the culture and all that. You gave us one story where you doubled the profitability of a company. What would you say on average is your ROI if someone was to hire you and bring you in within a year? What could they expect return on that initial investment?
Yeah, I mean, very often we see sales go up dramatically. I mean, that example I gave you, we doubled their sales revenue in a year, and they're on track right now to go probably 200 or 300% for this year. But we were very sales focused in that example. In other areas, in other companies, I mean, we worked really hard on their NPS score, and we took people from a 30 or a 40 up into an 80 or 90, and really improved. And so in that regard, right, they were really focused on keeping their clients. The sales engine's working well, but they were losing too much over here. They were letting too many clients were not happy once they got in the door. And so we had to really solve that issue. And so the ROI there is right. They can continue to grow again. They're going to get bigger and bigger because they're keeping those clients happy. Sometimes it's the owner ultimately, the business is maybe looking to acquire companies, are looking to be sold, they're looking to merge, and they want to do something. And so sometimes I have people bring me in because they're thinking about what they want to do with that business in the next 3 or 5 years, and they know the business isn't quite right. And they've done all of the things that they can do to get it there, but it's not quite the great company that someone's going to come in and pay top dollar for. And so that's the work we have to do to really help kind of up and amplify all those different parts of the culture. Because what we want is a buyer to come in and say, yeah, you have great sales and you do great stuff, but you have great people and you have a great culture, and that we're going to come in and buy because we know you're going to be a great fit because your people do an amazing job. We've seen that example. You have a great reputation in the industry, and they will not only buy you, but they will overpay for you in those examples, right?
Absolutely. So the person that you can help the most is the person you used to be. And so you got yourself in a bind with your own company.
Mhm.
And I love the part in the book where you're just like, you've got these glass walls and you're like this crazy person and you're just writing and writing and writing and writing and figuring it out. Just so anyone listening who's considering hiring you, can you tell us what companies that you actually studied to get to the point you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I read hundreds of books when I went through my big problem in 2008 and realized I had a huge cultural issue. I read every book I could get my hands on. I interviewed thousands. I did 10 years, probably close to 1,000 interviews with top executives from around the world, and some great life coaches and consultants and things like that. And it really was putting together this sort of culmination of thought, and that's what got me to the seven pillars. But I've been really fortunate. I did some great for the book. I did some great case studies and got to work with some amazing organizations like Caesars Entertainment, like NASA, VaynerMedia, who knows Gary Vaynerchuk's company. As Southwest Airlines is back when Southwest was the darling, not the ones who's taking away your bags, free bags, right now. But working with those types of organizations was really empowering for me to be able to come in and make a difference, but also to learn their incredible um, kind of work ethic and their incredible vision and their really commitment. So one of my biggest complaints as a consultant, a complaint, but also it's kind of just a funny observation. The companies that if you gave them like a letter grade from school, the companies that are like a C or a D, they don't call me. They don't call anybody. They either just keep going the way they're going or they get sold or right and or the boss dies, the leader dies, and they bring somebody else in and then maybe they get better. But they don't ever call in a consultant. It's really the B students and the A minus students who are already focused on being really good that want to be great. And that's who ends up calling me. I wish the C and the D, I don't want the S, but the C and the D, I wish they would call me and we could just change a few things and man, would things get better for their people, but they will never call me. It's the companies who are already care about this, that are already starting this work, that have already dedicated themselves to having a good company culture, that want to be great. And they make that decision that good is not enough. We want to be great. And that's usually where I step in.
I love it. And I'm sure you've read the book Good to Great.
Yeah.
I literally last week or the week before, one of my clients said, have you read the book Good to Great? And I said, yes. He said, so did I. And I'm good. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's
Right.
do it. Let's make you great. And it's so much fun. Chris, this has been an incredibly, this time has flown by big time. And I need to know, is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, I think everything you asked was great. And I'm happy to connect with people if they want to connect on LinkedIn or my website, or I'm on TikTok and Instagram. I do a lot of content there. But if anyone is interested, if you'd like a little guide on how to do, I mentioned the tsunami planning meetings. I have lots of other types of meetings that are really valuable. Because if you're having the same 30-minute meeting over and over again, no one likes that. It's terrible. There's actually a better way to do this. I'm happy to give everyone a free guide on how to do that. And you just need to text 33777. And then the message is just Chris, my name, Chris, Chris. And then it'll prompt you to what to do. And then we'll get you out that free PDF and go from there.
So it makes it very convenient for you guys. Like literally, all you have to do is go to the show notes and click the button, and then it'll tell you the numbers he just said, and you put the word Chris in there, and you've taken a step.
Yeah.
How important, Chris, is that first step into the unknown?
Yeah, and so this is where as humans we struggle. We think about the first step as being a leap, about being a jump or being, I don't know, just something scary. And it just needs to be a small step. Think about how do you, I think James Clear uses this in his book, Atomic Habits, and this concept is not new, but it's the aggregation of marginal gains, which is a fancy way of saying, how do I get 1% better? Can I just do a little something to get a little bit better? And if that's how you think about it, over time, that those little pieces, those little improvements, they really add up to something big. And that was how I did it with my company. We did not do giant changes. We focused on the big things first, but we made little tiny incremental changes over time. And everyone's goal was how do we get 1% better? And at the end of the year, if you did 1% a month, getting 12% better is a big deal. If you got 12% better every single year, 3, 4, 5 years, you mean you're not going to notice, you're going to recognize your company anymore. So just think about it in those terms of like just small changes, just little changes, and you'll feel the momentum. Much like a wave pushing you in the ocean or pulling you, you'll feel that, and you'll know when you should dive in and go for something bigger when you've discovered that momentum. But in the meantime, just try to do the little things first and see what takes.
Okay, and I've got two questions that I ask everyone, especially for you in the business world. What books should our folks listen to, read, including your own, of course? And guys, I will tell you before he answers that, this book is something that should be a reference book that you can go back to when you're struggling. You just go and look at the table of contents and go, oh, there we go. That's the idea. Great book. Other than your own, what books would you recommend to our people?
Other than my own, a few favorites that I tend to suggest to people. Um, the Art of Gathering is a great book to read, certainly helping understand how to curate meetings, how to uh, deal with meetings. Because meetings, again, I think is where cultures go to live and die. So the Art of Gathering, and this is also good for like, if you're doing conferences and client events and sales events and like everything. And how do you create a moment where people come together and are actually effective? So I think the Art of Gathering is a really, really big one. Despite the slight controversy happening right now, the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins I just read and I thought was great. You can decide on the controversy yourself, but the content itself was really, really good. I love Captivate. It's a great book I read this year. Um, I'm seeing what else have I read recently that's a really, really great book. Oh, the last one would be The Courage to Be Disliked.
Oh, who
It's
wrote
another
that?
great book. I'm sorry?
Who wrote that one?
The Courage to Be Disliked is by Ishiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. So it's this Japanese, but if you listen to it, you might be slightly annoyed. It's a conversation between a mentor and a mentee, and you get kind of get it's a little weird the way they do it, but it works. It works, but like if you're a reader, read it. If you're a listener, listen. I'm a listener, so I listen to it. And there's several books in that series, but I find that framing of how do I make the right decisions and how to do this stuff and eliminate that thought process that I need to be liked. Uh, I go back to like if you remember The Death of a Salesman, that old book we read in school. Willie Loman was the main character, and what I took from that story was he wanted to be liked by everyone, and what you needed to be is be respected. You can be liked as a net result of that. But if you walk around trying to be liked by everyone and liked by your employees, if that's your goal, you get yourself in a lot of trouble. We want to be respected because we make the right decisions, we do the right things, we're true to our word, we do what we say we're going to do, right? And people respect us first. That's how we get ahead. And I think The Courage to Be Disliked is a deep dive, a much different way to kind of get to that same end. And it was a really fascinating read.
Well, it sounds like those two books are very similar. Let Them and The Courage to like you can't make your decisions and there's no way you're going to make everyone happy. So
Yep.
thank
Yep.
you. Those are great recommendations. And my final question, because you are on Think Your Way to an Epic Life, what are some things that our folks can do to think their way to their own epic life?
Well, we were talking about Japanese stuff there, and so I'm going to go and dive into that again. But have you ever heard of the concept? I'm trying to remember what it's ikigai. There we go.
Yes, yes.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but if you go back and study that, it's like, what do you love? What can people pay you to do? And actually, what's really fun, if you use ChatGPT or Claude or one of those, if you use it often and you've put a lot of content and things in there, you can go and ask it, what is it? What is my, and type that in, and it will give you fantastic response. It'll deep dive it, and you'll probably be shocked at it, and it'll really help you kind of fine tune what you want to do. Now, if you don't know what you want to do, if you're still trying to figure it out, it's a great exercise to walk yourself through, and not just once, but to continue to go back and think about as you go through your career, or once a year, or whatever it is. If you go, if you're listening to this sometime near when this was recorded, I have mine up on LinkedIn right now, and kind of have a full one up there that people can take a look at, or DM me, and I'm happy to send you the post. But that's a great way to do it, I think.
Absolutely, guys. The Chat GPT isn't, if you will get, again, if you will get yourself out of the way and you will ask it, please ask me questions. This is what I want to do. Please ask me questions so that we can do it right. It will ask you the questions that will reveal the right things to do. It's very, very powerful. Chris, I feel like we could do this for hours. Thank you so much for being on Think Your Way to an Epic Life.
All right, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure.